Here's the story of 2020. It was a year for us to live in sync.
So many things that need our understanding. It's time for us to think. It's the story of fellow humans who were busy with lives of their own, but they thought of bringing us together, and we can watch from home. We can all make this world much better. It's about what we're willing to confront. So sit back and enjoy the conversation of these rainbow warriors called the Queer Bunch. The Queer Bunch. The Queer Bunch. It's a great day to watch the Queer Bunch.
Welcome to the Queer Bunch, our second episode of season 3, and we're all here except for Elana Harte, who could not make this episode. She sends her regrets to everybody. Hello, queer hosts. How are you?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Doing good.
Is everybody good today? All right. Well, I thought we would start by checking in with everybody. How you doing and what are you working on? So before we dive into today's episode, Shelly-Ann, hit me.
Oh, me first. Hi. Hey, everyone. Happy to be back and have this conversation. It was nice to kind of watch the last episode. And so that was really cool. I'm happy to continue to have these conversations today. What am I working on? Well, it's Black History Month. And so it's a lot of presentations, a lot of workshops. But a lot of the really incredible work that really fuels me is the work with our artist collective, our Uplift Black Artist Collective. And so today we had a chance to go to a local high school and speak with grade 10 and 11 students about free writing. And we were able to talk about, to bring in 3 artists and songs that we really love by different Black artists, and play it and help to inspire free writing. And so we had Miles Davis, Nina Simone, and Bob Marley as our, as our 3 artists. And we had 2 of our artists from our Uplift Black Artist Collective talk about their writing and their writing styles and what helps them create and songwrite. And they were able to perform their original pieces as well for the students today. So yeah, all in all, it was a pretty bomb day. I love days like this. And, we had a student who came and was kind of nervous to kind of speak in front of everybody. And then showed the piece that she wrote during the Miles Davis, So What, like 9-minute track. And she literally wrote this song, like this gorgeous, beautiful song about him breaking through societal norms and looking for freedom. It was just like such an incredible experience, and I'm just really happy. I want to do lots more stuff like this.
I gotta say, Shelly-Ann earlier sent me a couple of clips, one of her singing, and she's got chops, and one of her dancing, and God, she's got moves. So yeah, I get to look at some of your work earlier. Who wants to jump in? Kenney, take us.
What am I working on? Oh my God, what am I not working on?
Well, you've been posting so nonstop on social media, so
listen, it's you got to do what you got to do. I am with work. I mean, we have the here in our city, our Black Cultural Center has a 40th anniversary gala coming up, so I'm doing some work with them from the dance perspective, getting some African dancers lined up for them for a performance for that. And then there's lots kind of happening, just small rural kind of areas in Nova Scotia are starting to have their kind of like midway to Pride kind of events. So there's lots of that kind of popping up. And then I'm just kind of doing the regular. I'm out there and I'm just kind of kicking it and just trying to do what I do and just breathe. I'm paddling.
Good man. Morgan, what's up?
Yeah, what am I up to? I am still working on my first album that should be coming out around Pride time this year, which I'm really excited about. And I'm also working on opening up a jam space here in Regina, which I haven't been very loud about. So this is the first like public talking about it.
Okay.
But there's nowhere for musicians and other noisemakers to make noise,
Oh, wow.
really. Like there's a few places, but not really. And so I'm trying to open up a
The
space
physical
that'll be a,
space. Good for you.
yeah, yeah,
Good.
exactly. So yeah, that's mostly what I'm working on.
Good stuff, Casper.
Oh,
Nice.
so I'm actually like the reason why I have to leave at 6:30 is because there's the first meeting of the trans masculine choir.
Made it
That I'm
happen?
directing. Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
that's
directing a
Cool.
choir now, apparently.
nice.
We'll see how that goes, you know.
Oh,
Yeah, so I'm excited about that because it's like, space for trans masculine people, and we don't really have a lot of those, you know. So yeah, then there's also I'm releasing a song on the 20th. It's called Until We're All Free, and it's about like it's basically a song that like talks about like nobody will be free until we're all free through like the story of two children, one Palestinian kid in Gaza and one like a black girl in the US.
mhm.
And it's like basically like just yeah, just talking about like the similarity between all of that and at first I wanted to like release a Valentine's Day song, and then I don't know, I felt very weird about it right now, so I felt like that would be more appropriate. But yeah, and then on February 26th, there's a comedy show in Montreal called the Zaddy's Show. That's having the Black History Month edition, and so it's gonna be my first stand-up set. My second stand-up set because the first was last month, and so. Yeah, that's what I'm doing this month, I guess. Yeah.
That's all what you're doing this month.
I know I'm also producing music for this really cool artist. Uh,
And
called Antoine.
helping me.
Oh,
Brooklyn,
nice.
you're up to. Brooklyn, what are you up to?
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi. Sorry,
Hi.
I didn't hear you at first. I was just loving everyone else's updates. That's so beautiful. What I'm up to in the month of February is in my day job, I work with a lot of street artists and muralists. So we're
Oh,
putting out a lot of art calls to get really gorgeous murals up all across the city, which is so lovely. And for music, this is Q1 is the era of Brooklyn does a lot of co-writing. Brooklyn one day, fingers crossed, scores a beautiful publishing deal. So I've been writing with a ton of really incredible artists from all over the place. I've been driving down to Toronto once a week, making sure that I get some studio sessions in. And other than that, I'm just pumped to be here.
again, what a good amount of work. Well, for me, similar to Morgan, I'm working on my album, which will start rolling out early summer and Pride, and probably past Pride too. I'm working on a couple of music videos for that. So the album is going to be called This Playlist Will Make You Feel Good, and it's a lot of songs that are meant for collective and personal empowerment and remembering how beautiful life is and that sort of thing. Also had a good win last week when I've been lobbying Pride Toronto for a space for live queer artists because I keep seeing that a lot of prides and I love DJs and I love drag queens, but that seems to be the majority of acts on stages. So I've been asking for that space, and I just got a green light to create an all night music festival for the queer live entertainment space. Thank you. But then I realized, what the hell did I do to myself? Because that's a lot of
So
work.
this year, it's starting this year.
It's gonna be this year. They gave me the green light. They sent their selected venues that we can look at. I got a couple of artists already and people in that field interested in making this happen and growing it. So it might turn into hopefully in a few years maybe an all weekend queer entertainment live festival kind of thing.
That's so cool.
We just gotta get sponsors, so we got a lot of ideas, but definitely the interest is there, and people want to see it happen. So I think with that kind of energy, we'll make it happen. So, yeah.
You can make it happen in a big way. Just you can do it. Funding. There's actual funding out there for festivals and things like
Francis,
that.
look at it. The
Provincially and
only
federally.
problem is the timing. We've got only a few months, so we may, but we're going after, the regulars, TikTok, Spotify, that sort of thing. Just wants to be involved in a queer music festival. So yeah, we'll see where we can take it. I'm excited and nervously excited.
They
Yeah.
did a live stage for Pride on Church Street and also at Nathan Phillips Square last year, which was really beautiful for Toronto.
Okay.
I played the live stage. It was really scary but so fun.
Oh, cool. All right. So, Matt, I'll circle back to you when we have more information about what's happening. Yeah. And anybody who is interested in being on that. Yeah, with that, let's roll into today's topic, and we're gonna be celebrating Black History Month on this episode and looking at intersectionality within our queer community, which is why I wore something a bit more traditional. And I put some, I don't know if you can see it, I put some kohle on. I don't know if you know what that means. Kohl is like the eyeliner, but in Arabic, they use,
Nice.
yeah. Shelly-Ann, you
Yeah.
emailed a question. Can you remind me of that
Mhm.
question again and see what we can roll in this segment before we take a break?
Yeah, absolutely. I think right now, with it being Black History Month, and a celebration of Black excellence, I think intersectionality, we're going to have conversations about intersectionality. So I would like to know personally, if you can just kind of maybe share, everybody can share some Black, queer, and trans folk who who are leading and so who have inspired some of our ancestors, and anybody who's really inspired you and your work, but people that you look up to. And this can be past, present. I just want to give a little big ups to some of our Black queer folk who have been doing the damn thing.
Love it. Kenney.
Oh gosh, I don't even know where to begin because there's a lot that come to mind. I will say someone right here on this panel is Blxck Cxsper, because I've admired just what Casper's been doing in his own world with a lot of his own work and how he puts himself out there. And I think that, when you see somebody doing that, you have to get behind them and you have to share what it is that they're doing so that more people see it and more people experience it. There's so many artists, Black queer artists. I mean, Toronto alone is just a crazy bomb of these artists that are so great. Like Trippy is there, and Atika. Atika's in Montreal, I think, and back and forth between Montreal and Toronto. But these incredible artists. Safari Anthony is there. Gary Beals, who's originally from Nova Scotia, who's going to be at here in Halifax very, very, very soon. There's so many artists that are out there, but even locally, I'm now coming into contact with so many new people, especially in the East Coast. Queer and Black together, when you're talking about intersectionality, isn't something that you see a lot of, but you're starting to see it more and more. And I think that that's a really good thing. And, making space for people to be able to be present in both, like however they represent themselves, is really important. So there's a lot of folks who are around, and there's so many names. That's just some of the few that I could get really excited about and gush, but like out in the Saskatchewan area, my God, Wild Black is an artist that I just can't get enough of.
Good amount of mentions there. Cool. Brooklyn, what are your...
Good that you came to me next, because Kenney stole two of my favorite artists. I went hyper local with this question, and I was thinking about a lot of the local Toronto music makers who are Black and queer, who are making incredible work. And Wild Black and Safari Anthony were both on my list, but Jemuel or Jem Sings, amazing. Jordan Alexander, who was also one of the main characters on Gossip Girl, which is so awesome.
I had Jordan on one of my shows representing Black artists at some point early in the years. Yeah.
So cool. And
Okay.
Kyla Charter and James Bailey and Witch Prophet. And there's a Montreal/Winnipeg in between the two artists named Vagina Witchcraft. I don't know if we're allowed to say vagina on a podcast, but
I would think so. I would hope so.
but they're amazing. And other than that, deep in the punk scene, I've always been into Polystyrene. I've
Okay.
always been into Tamar Kali. Those are some of my faves.
Cool. Morgan.
So I'm hearing about all these great musicians and artists, and I'm like, I think I misunderstood the assignment, because the person that I was thinking of giving a shout out to isn't actually an artist per se. But I was wanting to give a shout out to Ilya Parker at Decolonizing Fitness. Because Ilya is someone that I've been following for a while now, and he actually opens up so many doors on so many intersections for people, because he's Black, he's trans, he's disabled, he's got and he is doing fitness for anybody, absolutely anybody. And I just think that's something that's beautiful. So I wanted to be like, hey, folks who are out there listening, go look him up. He could use a boost in followers.
And it wasn't an assignment. It was whatever you chose, really.
I was referencing the understood the assignment.
Yeah, but I don't think we're gonna concentrate on artists. I think
That's fair.
Shelly-Ann meant
Yeah.
anybody who inspires you. Yeah.
Anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone.
Great.
Thank you for showing us.
Do you have anybody that you look up to? I mean,
Honestly, you could say Laya is also an artist, because sometimes the type of stuff he writes, I'm like, that's poetry right there, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
absolutely.
met him a few times. He's really cool. I did undershirt for him at some point, for when he was starting Decolonizing Fitness. That's like, yeah, for me, like the people I look up to, I also misunderstood the question, I guess. Because I was honestly, like, yeah, for me, like the people that I look up to the most are people I know for the most part, you know, because I don't know, I'm the type of person that I like to surround myself with people that inspire me, you know? So I can think of the first person that I had in mind is somebody who was an activist who passed away a few years ago. She was called Monica Roberts. She was an activist in Texas and did so much for trans people, and had this blog that's still being run by other people now called Trans Griot. Which is basically based on how people in Africa and communities in Africa transmit stories orally and things and they're called griots, and so it was based out of that. And so a lot of trans murders and things, she was the first person to report them and actually accurately define people, and she did so much in Texas for trans laws and things, and she was just a mother to anybody that met her, you know? I met her at the Black Trans Advocacy Conference. It's in Dallas every year. And yeah, she just had that energy, you know? People that has that energy when you walk into a room, you're like, everything is gonna be okay. You know what I mean? She's just such a magical person. So she's the first person that came to mind. But then I also think about my friend. I have a friend, Mise Dupré-Latour, who started her cosmetics line. She's a Black trans woman from Senegal who migrated to Canada 4 or 5 years ago and started a cosmetics line because she couldn't find, products that worked for her. So for me, that's, inspiring. I'm also yeah, I don't know. It's just so many people. There's artist wise, there's Backwash that, I think I performed alongside her a few times, and just same, it's her energy. She also has that type of energy where when you walk into a room with Backwash, it's so calm, you know? I don't know how to explain that. But I think for me, all the people on my list are Black trans people, because Black trans people are magical, you know? And just in the work that I do, I've been surrounded by just Black trans people for so long, and it's just I feel that's the only place where I feel fully safe, you know? It's surrounded by community, and honestly, every single Black trans person inspires me. So I don't know.
Thank you. Shelly-Ann, I'll leave you to the end since you asked the question. I was gonna say, just for the sake of time, because we gotta jump into the next segment. that everybody that you mentioned, I'm familiar with all the names because I'm Doran and watch the queer and artist community. I'm inspired by my friends. What Blxck Cxsper said to me. I'm surrounded by trans and Black artists and their journeys, their work, their lived experiences. I know all differ, and all of those stories that I hear on my shows and all that inspire me. So I know that there's beautiful stories out there. And if we're looking at history, whatever, I'm inspired by a lot of Black artists from, Whitney to Ella Fitzgerald to all the big names, all that sort of stuff. So yeah. Shelly-Ann, what would you be answering this?
Oh, I know I know we got to go quick, but I have so many. So I mean, obviously there is the past, those who kind of led the way. I mean, James Baldwin still just gets me. There's never a time that I see a quote from James Baldwin that I don't feel it right here. For so many reasons, James Baldwin is one of those people. Basquiat, the artist, Basquiat, their work was so compelling. All of those artists who are still in the closet, who continue to serve the music and bring the art as they continue to struggle to be themselves. I mean, there's always rumors, about those who are part of the community. And so I also want to recognize them because I think it's really important because they still exist and they still provide, and then get to the local. I have to acknowledge so many people who have inspired me and continue to inspire me every day, like the founders of, Black Lives Matter Canada, Cyrus Marcus Ware, Dr. Cyrus Marcus Ware, Raven Wings. I think about Dr. ABC, Dr. Andrew Campbell, who is continuing to do incredible work, especially in the education system.
Andrew. I love Andrew.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
I think about, Adebayo, Chris Katiti, who started the Eureka Now organization, who is a Ugandan artist and activist who continues to put themselves on the line in order to fight for what is right. I see you. I love you. Just those who are within my own circle with Uplift Black, the artists who continue to show up. In particular, our center director, Honey Johnson, who is an Afro-Indigenous two-spirited individual who exited the carceral system 3 years ago and has just flourished and just, refuses to leave anyone behind and inspires so many people. And I just love them to bits. And I know that they're going to continue to do big things. I think about Lady Phil. Lady Phil is the founder of UK Black Pride, who I get a chance to see in an upcoming conference summit that the Al-Shantae Network is putting on, celebrating and recognizing Black queer and trans folk who are in the industry to help and guide and inspire others. And that's happening in March in Ottawa. And so really excited. And as I say that, I have to acknowledge Tyler Boyce and Brittany Hudson, who are leading the way on that project, how they continue to uplift the voices of Black, queer, and trans people right across the country with the Al-Shantae Network and their Back to the Roots project. I mean, I can just keep going on. I mean, Blxck Cxsper. I mean, I've been following you, and I just think you're amazing, and I think you're doing such great work. There's just so much. So I want to acknowledge everybody who's doing the damn thing.
I love this. And oh my God, we said a lot of names. So more power to all our community influencers, and artists, and trans community and Black community. And with that, well, let's take a break.
Everybody that says that, they can't book Black artists because they don't know any.
Yeah.
This section was for them.
That was for them. Yeah, 100%.
I really like that, a lot of names. So hey, all of you who have been mentioned on the show, keep it up. You're doing great work. We love you. All right, we're gonna take a break and we're gonna come back. And we are back on the show, everyone. Shelly-Ann had a family emergency to deal with, so she's just gonna take a little break, and hopefully we'll get her back on the show. But today we are discussing intersectionality within our queer community. We just found a couple of links online that we're gonna get Blxck Cxsper and Morgan to read a paragraph from that, just to get us the conversation going, kind of thing. Where are we, BC, on that?
I just want to make sure I have the right paragraph. Because there's a few sections, but every section has several paragraphs.
Yeah. Okay, find one that you feel is an explanation for what intersectionality may mean, maybe.
Okay. What's in the second link, I feel?
Okay. No, that's for Morgan. Second link is for Morgan.
Okay,
Okay.
the first link. So I'll do the first paragraph and we'll see. Okay, so with the recent social unrest in the United States, and I mean in Canada too, let's be honest, organizations may need a framework to better understand the issues surrounding these events. Intersectionality is one of the many lenses that can be used to better understand these issues. First, an explanation of the term intersectionality. The ideas of what would eventually be called intersectionality have some of their roots based in 1970s feminism. Black feminist scholar activists, a number of whom were LGBTQ, developed theoretical frameworks to serve as a model for other women of color to broaden feminism's definition and scope. During this time, feminism was broadly focused on the experiences of heterosexual white women while disregarding issues such as sexuality and race.
Cool. All right. That gives us a good historical background to where that came from. Morgan, what is the other link that we were looking at say?
Sure. So we're looking at the trevorproject.org, which is a great website in general. And I'll read a paragraph from that page on intersectional conversations. As the national conversation around racial justice and equality for Black people grows in volume and scope, many Black LGBTQ young people are facing difficult conversations with people who are uninformed about race, queer identities, or the intersection of both. These conversations can take a variety of forms. Some are engaging their white friends for the first time about how being Black impacts their experience in LGBTQ spaces, and others are opening up about the nuances of their queer experiences in Black spaces. For people who hold multiple marginalized identities, it can sometimes feel overwhelming to explore the layers of these conversations with others, especially those whose lived experiences are different.
Thank you. Thanks for reading that. And that gives us another very good entry to this. What we ended up finding online, we kind of located some questions that we thought we would just propose them and see who of us wants to jump and answer that based again on the introduction that we have. So let me throw this at the host. Where or what are some intersections in your personal life with LGBTQ plus awareness? That makes sense to who wants to jump on answering that? Brooklyn.
Sure.
Well said.
So
Any?
yeah, absolutely. So I myself identify as a white cis femme lesbian, which means that the ways in which my identity has intersections is that I am much less marginalized. I hold a higher seat of power in the framework of white supremacy and the framework of capitalism. And so that means that even though our society at an institutional level is fully racist, that it's a job for me to work to dismantle those systems of oppressions that are set up against others. And so for me, the intersectionality that I face is much smaller than those who have more identities that are tied to who they are.
Nicely answered. Kenney, you were going to jump in?
I was going to say, as someone who probably has maybe the smallest amount of that intersectionality kind of happening from a queer and LGBTQ and maybe race perspective, exactly what Brooklyn is saying. My role then becomes understanding about intersectionality and how it impacts other people, and being, not being a bystander, being, armed and ready to jump into conversation, to be able to have, dialogue around that, to open up people's understanding of it more. Because I do come from a seat, just like Brooklyn said, of being, having more privilege, having, more opportunities, and realizing because of that, you need to shift gears, and you need to be ready to have that conversation from the other lens, and you need to educate yourself on understanding the intersectionality more.
I love you too. I mean, for me personally, gay, cis, Middle Eastern, male, I do see certain parts that are privileged, and other parts that I have to intertwine with my existence. Shelly-Ann, all is okay?
Yes, I think it might just be a sprain.
Okay.
We've wrapped it, and we're gonna
You just
see where it goes.
mentioned a family emergency, so we're glad you're.
Yeah. My son plays basketball, so these things happen.
Cxsper, I think that's an
Yeah.
interesting question to hear from you. What are some intersectionality within your personal life? Cxsper.
Oh, me? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. I thought you were. Oh my God. I kind of like have like a collection, I collect them. So basically, like, yeah, so I'm a person of color, Black, but like being racially ambiguous, that's like a privilege within the intersection. I'm also a migrant. I'm autistic. I'm disabled. Um, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. I'm trans. I forgot that one. But yeah, I'm trans, and like trans in a way that like legally I'm not, I'm still like dead named and stuff. So like that's also like for me, I feel like that's and within the trans community, there's different intersections, and for me, like when I look at like the different intersections in my trans identity, there's like the fact that I'm non-binary, that's one, but the fact that I transitioned like to like transition medically, and that my papers are not changed, that's like another, because that like reduces like, the amount of places you can go versus somebody that, for example, like would be, like could legally pass as cis. Um, but yeah, but then I also have a lot of privileges. But it's very like the privileges are very conditional when you have like certain intersectionalities. It's like you have a privilege until somebody discovers one facet of you, and then they're like, "Ha, got you."
That's a very interesting point of view. Cool. Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
jump off of that, or are you
Yeah.
still going, Casper?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to say, like, I mean, I've got also some intersectional stuff going on with me, but I wanted to jump off of that note about the variety of privilege even within an identity, because
Yeah.
like as a non-binary person, I'm under the trans umbrella, but I'm not a binary trans person, and there's like very, very little way in which I can be cis assumed. And I like to say assumed instead of passing, because passing implies that that's like an ideal that we're striving towards. And I don't believe that. But people who are cis assumed, they do have a level of almost micro privilege within the trans community, because then they don't have to like fight quite so hard unless someone finds them out.
But there's
If
also
they're, yeah,
oh,
sorry.
no, there's also cis assumed, but when you're non-binary and you're cis assumed, you get rejected from
Yeah.
corporate spaces.
Yeah.
Like,
100%.
I show up to non-binary spaces and I'm constantly told like, no, can you please leave? Like I've never
Oh,
been
yeah.
accepted. And trans people always never respect my like that's actually the portion of the people who respect my non-binary identity the least is white trans people. Because that's also a lot of thing, like trans people of color and specifically Black trans people do not have the opportunity to present as more androgynous or as more like, like the when people picture, for example, like trans masculinity, they picture like the white AFAB, like trans guy that's like very, non-threatening, you know what I mean? Versus somebody that's like, a person of color that shows up with like just not being white.
Well, and also non-binary spaces are often focused on non-binary as this definition of like woman light.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so anyone who's particularly masculine in those spaces often gets asked to not be in those spaces because the spaces are like basically not men and not masculine folks. And that's really frustrating because people get left out of the conversation. Like I have a friend who's a very masculine looking non-binary person, and they almost never get included in non-binary stuff because people are like, well, but you're basically a dude. And it's not true. They're not.
And it's also, sorry to keep jumping off of that, but for me, I also found that like when it comes to like masculine privilege, for example, it's so different depending on the intersectionality that you have. For example, like people assume that I'm Middle Eastern, or like my friends who are Black, because they're masculine, like they transition into a space that now they're a threat. You know what I mean? So it's like you have that privilege in certain spaces, but in white spaces, that masculinity actually brings you like a hyper visibility. Like everybody thinks you're aggressive. You're always like people don't listen to you, And so, and I found that for me, that was when I transitioned, like before that, I passed as a white woman 100%. My life was good. I started transitioning, and the police started arresting me everywhere, and like people started like checking me in like supermarkets and stuff, and like going through my bag. And at the airport, it was like always random checks, and I was like, yo, like I just wanted to get paid more, you know what I mean? Like that's the Sarah Silverman. I transitioned for that, you know what I mean?
I just got the joke. You know what? I'm gonna grow this second question, but I was going to ask Casper again because of all what you said. I think that's a good follow-up. How does certain no, where how can being LGBT both complicate and enrich experiences in self-love, romantic love, familiar love? If you want to address religious love, it's up to you. But let's address the first parts of that.
Well, just like I said, it depends on like which intersectionality you have. Because for me, for example, I'm queer, like, I'm married to a trans woman. I'm a non-binary trans person myself. There's nothing more queer than that, you know what I mean? And still like I feel I don't feel accepted in the queer community, to be quite honest. Like recently I had a performance and it was the most disrespectful crowd I've ever seen in my life. Like people turned their back at me, were talking during my set, even though I had just talked about Black History Month and stuff. And for me, that's the thing. Like when I feel, and that's a conversation I have with a lot of people who are trans people of color, but we feel much safer with like cis queer people of color than we do with white trans people, And so for me, it's like the different. It's just very, it's a very weird space to be into because it's like, yeah, because you're assumed a certain way, so it's like I'm not queer enough for the queer people, but I'm too queer for the cis straight people, you know what I mean? But for me, I love my queerness. Like I see myself as non-binary, like I don't have a sexuality, I don't have a gender, it doesn't make sense in my mind, so I don't really, but that's how I identify, you know what I mean? But yeah, so for me, like, but my queerness, I find that it just opens my eyes to the world and it makes me understand other people better in a way. It makes me understand that I don't understand people and that's a very beautiful part of life, not to understand other people because it allows you to learn, and it allows you to listen. So that's the happy part. And the sad part is that, yeah, I wish queer people were more accepting of differences within the queer community, And yeah.
I find that really distressing. And I mean, I see a lot of it online. When you spend enough time, I'm out there and I'm trying to find more artists and connect them with different people and with other artists and, really kind of like, make space for them and raise them up and whatnot. But then you see this underbelly of this weird, I don't even have a word for it, but just how we turn on one another because we don't fit into whatever box we've created in our head as to what the pure version of a subcategory is. And it's kind of like, oh my God, first of all, we're out here fighting with each other when we shouldn't be. We really need to be one unified voice and embracing all of our differences and beautiful things about us. But it becomes this weird kind of I don't know if it's I don't know if it's a jealousy thing. It's so weird, but there's something that happens there where people want to push others down when they're already being pushed down by the society themselves. It's so bizarre to me, and it's very distressing.
It is, but I don't want to overgeneralize, because I also work with a lot of people who see what we're seeing and try
Yeah.
to do the work that we're doing. So,
Mhm.
but we need to keep educating and addressing and speaking out over the other sections. We're gonna switch questions just because we
Can
have.
I just jump in really quick first, Antoine?
Yeah.
Because that question was one I wanted to answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, like, when it comes to different experiences of love as someone who is queer and trans and polyamorous and, all of my other basket of words, I think that if you aren't doing the work to figure out who you are, you can't really love who you are, right? So people who have really done the work to figure out, am I cis or trans? Am I queer or straight? Am I whatever? Can love themselves more deeply, I think, than people who don't do the work to figure out who they are in the first place. But it does throw some wrenches in like romantic love and familial love and religious love, because other people like to view differences as negative sometimes. So like the dating pool here, everyone jokes because Saskatchewan, right? We're a small province. Even smaller than that is the queer community. Even smaller than that is the trans community. Even smaller than that is the polyamorous community. So we're all dating the same 6 people.
Thank you. That actually, I'm glad you picked up that, because that was a great
Yeah.
follow to do. Shelly-Ann,
Yeah.
how do certain aspects of your identity impact other aspects of your identity? For instance, how does your racial identity impact your experience with your sexual orientation, or vice versa? Can you pick up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a couple things. I guess when we talk about my racial identity, I'm super femme. I'm very comfortable with who I am. I've done a lot of work to love myself. And I have no problem sharing that joy and that love of self with others. And what that does, it kind of, and I'm also an activist. And so I'm also like, very, very vocal about how I feel about what's happening and the injustices that I see on a regular basis. And so what does that do? That means, trope after trope after trope. I'm also a single parent, sole parent of 2 kids. So I'm the strong Black woman. I'm the angry Black woman because I'm an activist. I'm the hypersexual Jezebel because I love my body and myself, and and I own my sexuality. And so it's, you know what I mean? Like, it's always just something. There's always some way and some box in which I'm fitting to other people's biases when it comes to my identity. Also, when it comes to my queerness, I'm my sexual identity, my gender identity is queer, right? And so that, because my expression is very femme, there's a lot of that assumption as to how I see the world, as to what my interests are, and that can really limit the interactions that I have. And in the spaces where I feel seen, the most seen, because of that identity. And so, and I also, as being a genderqueer individual, I'm not really invited into trans, circles, not really invited into non-binary spaces. And so sometimes I feel like there isn't really a space for me. To me, gender is a social construct. It doesn't exist. To me, there's fluidity in everything and in everyone. And, so sometimes those play into my own insecurities about my own identity. If I can't, be in spaces with other people who feel like me, or know even that there are other people who feel like me and experience life like me, I tend to question whether that's even a true experience. Right. And that happened a lot with my sexual identity, like living in this space of being attracted to cis men or masculine individuals, but also being, attracted to femmes, and, feminine individuals as well. It really, made it difficult for me to, when I was in a relationship with someone who was or masculine or cisgendered, it made people believe that my identity wasn't real. Right. And that I was just, and that I was just playing that particular role at a certain time. And so, and that happens a lot, like the constant questioning of expression and how that plays into how people see you. And so, yeah, those are some of the things that I noticed.
Thank you for sharing. I think we could, for the sake of time, got about 10 minutes. So let's all jump on whatever anyone to say. I'm going to mix two questions. How do you think living with multiple aspects of your identity, intersectionality, affects LGBTQ youth and adults differently from their straight counterparts? And what do you think are some of the stresses that come with having LGBTQ identity? What about stresses for those who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color LGBTQ? So kind of feels to me like one big, huge question. Who wants to? Brooklyn, we haven't heard from you. First, what are you drinking? Okay.
I'm drinking a non-alcoholic beer
There
today
you go.
because I still love the taste of beer, but I'm not drinking right now.
I thought it might be it was maybe kombucha, but anyways.
I mean, I do like a kombucha from time to time, but it can be too sour tasting.
Yeah, cool.
It makes me.
So any thoughts on any thoughts on the question?
This question. Okay, so for me, I really move through life in a very different way from folks who have multiple aspects of intersectionality about them. I think that there's a really good analogy, and I don't know who came up with it, that a straight white man views himself as a blank canvas, and that there's not a need to identify himself as cis or straight or white because he is a blank canvas. And once we add different intersections of people's identities, we're adding paint to that canvas, which I think ends up in a much more beautiful image. Not to discount the painting of Straight White Man, but it's plain. So in that, I think that we have to think, I don't know, institutionally about like capitalism and white supremacy and how it's really difficult for folks who benefit from systems of white supremacy to let go of those benefits to allow other people to shine. And as someone who does benefit from white supremacy, that means that I'm also contributing to it, which is shitty and something that we need to continue to work on so that we can dismantle those systems.
Thank you, Brooklyn.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course. You're a host.
I just feel like when we're talking about youth, I really wanted to jump in here. So living in a smaller town, well, I mean, it's a city, but it's a smaller city.
Okay.
There is the struggles of those who move from the city to get away from the queers. And, and it happens quite a bit, right? And we've seen definitely an influx of people from the South, really Toronto and the GTA, who've moved up to the Barrie Innisfil area, who are really looking to kind of get away from all of the education that's being taught in schools about LGTB and and so you're constantly.
Is the reason for people to move to get away from.
Oh yeah, they're literally moving, and here's me, Uplift Black, being like, "Hey, we gay and we Black," you know what I mean? Like they can't stand me up here. They can't stand me. But what I see, from my place is that we're dealing with those in the Black community who are hyper religious, who are looking to move from those communities. And then, coming up to Uplift Black, hoping because they're realizing that their kids are dealing with an incredible amount of racial discrimination now in these spaces. And so they're looking to partner with different organizations like ours who are doing really great work with youth in the community. And then they hear that we're queer or trans, and they're like, oh, no, you're not allowed. You're not allowed to be here. Right? As if they have no one in their family who is part of that part. So our job is consistently to get into spaces and be not just hyper Black, but also be hyper queer and trans, because we want those youth who are going into those spaces, first of all, they're being moved from the city completely away from a lot of that community. And then now being, if they didn't really deal with a lot of racial discrimination in some of those bigger high schools in the city, they're now dealing with that too. So it's like a double whammy, and they're getting it heavy and hard in this community. And then they don't really have their support from their parents. because their parents are also dealing with a lot of their own ignorance and internal, racism and internal, biases towards sexuality and gender. And so that's really what I'm seeing, is that when we are connecting with, Black youth, they're desperate. They're desperate. And at that time, a lot of them are really struggling, like really struggling. We also have a lot of youth and those within our organization that are also, Black, queer, living in white homes, right? Because they've been part of the foster system or part of the, or have been adopted into these white spaces. And so like that loss of identity, that just comes from not necessarily growing up in a space like that. And then when we sit there and we learn more about, the historical issues when it comes to the foster care system and removing Black kids from their parents, and this is all kind of like now being discussed a lot. That they're being triggered and traumatized, because of this information that's being shared, because now some of them don't even know who their parents are, or who their birth parents are, I should say, right? And now we're trying to figure out, is this my experience? Like, is that what happened to me? There's so many layers, and when we don't understand those layers, we're really doing injustice when we're putting together like social programming and things like that. And so I think, a real understanding of intersectionality and those effects of those who are within our serving community, those who are supporting, is so important. And I'm just not seeing a lot of that being recognized.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
I was just gonna mention just on the youth and what have you. Similar with Arabic, Middle Eastern, POC from the East and whatever. We are not cultures that celebrate sexuality. They also put down sexuality. So then you grow queer and you want to talk sexuality, but you're taught not to celebrate it. So a lot of I find that a lot turn into addictions and escapism to try to deal with their sexuality. So I think more education for youth, more acceptance will be needed to accept your different identities, kind of thing.
And somebody who was in the post-secondary education system for 25, 26 years, every year I saw it coming from rural areas where there's just so much confusion, not just from, kids who are queer, and now all of a sudden they're getting into, an educational space and thinking that there's going to be more support for them. And a lot of the times there still isn't. But also from the other kids who have never been educated on anything and have just been shut out of just conversation, and now being brought in and with conversation that's very open, and really balancing that. We don't do our youth any service by not educating them or shielding them from things, when really they're going to encounter it and they're going to find it themselves. And they're going to, they're going to look at it and they're going to be like, why isn't anybody talking about this?
Yeah, it's very hard to understand why would anybody not want to educate the young to just what to expect and what to deal with. We've got a couple of minutes. Anybody has anything on this topic to wrap up the whole conversation?
I do, if
There
that's
you go.
okay. So the question of how do you think living with multiple aspects of identity affect queer and trans youth and adults differently from their straight counterparts? I did want to throw one out there that I've experienced, which is disability. I walk into a doctor's office and I'm like, please don't be transphobic, please don't be transphobic, please don't be transphobic. And then if they're the only specialist, like, I'm in Saskatchewan, sometimes there's only one specialist, for different things. And sometimes there's more than one specialist, but they're all terrible. And sometimes, even just finding a GP is really, really frustrating and difficult. And then when you've got disability or illness that you're dealing with that you need consistent care for, trying to find someone who can provide that care without looking at part of your identity and going, well, I don't really want to deal with you, or something like that. Like, there's aspects there that, cishet people don't have to deal with the same thing. And like, even if they've got disability, that's an intersectionality thing, right? And I would imagine that it's similar or even probably worse if you're a person of color, because of all of the medical racism in the world, but especially here in North America, where like, who feels more pain is something that is questionable to doctors depending on the gender, the race, the like appearance, the
Right.
fatness or thinness, right? As a fat person, medical help is harder to access because people go, well, you should just go for walks,
Oh, well.
and so yeah, it's just interesting to me that there's so many things that can affect something as basic human rights as healthcare and whether or not it's accessible, even if it's physically accessible.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. That's a very strong point to end this segment with. Thank you, host. This was very eye-opening and also a great conversation. I'm sure we'll all probably visit this topic at some point again. There's so much to talk about, and it's really part of who we are. This, oh yeah. What is that? What do,
Imagine a world where Black queer people are thriving. This is actually a tarot card pack that I found online. Well, that was gifted that you can find online. It's incredible. It's incredible. There's all these incredible Black queer artists from that's in part of like on the cards, and some of them are from today, and then they also have just incredible photography and everything. So I just wanted to share this Black
Writing
History
that
Month.
down.
Pretty cool.
let's say this is a
Pretty
good
cool.
book to kind of learn and celebrate Black History Month with.
Yeah, or just if you just want a really cool like tarot deck with some sexy Black people on it.
Cool. All right, we're gonna take a short break and we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. And we are back, and we just had a great conversation, didn't we? That was a good
Yes.
conversation.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. Well, with that, let's say goodbye. All right. Anybody has anything to wrap up this topic with? Just a big statement.
I
No.
think that it's an ongoing conversation that we need to revisit on the regular, because the only way it becomes commonplace that people know about it and we're educated about it is if we keep talking about it.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I had one
Yeah,
last
I
thing.
just
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to note that while most people were watching the Super Bowl, Israel was bombing Rafah, and we have to recognize that this is calculated, and we have to keep watch, and we have to keep shouting, ceasefire, free Palestine, free the Congo, free Sudan. I know those places don't necessarily have as much access to technology to share what's happening on a daily basis there, but we know that if it's happening like that in Palestine, I can only imagine what has been and has continued to happen in those places in the African countries. And so just, we can't, like, as marginalized people, as queer and trans folk, this is our job to keep standing up. These people are being slaughtered, and it's genocide.
Thank you, Shelly-Ann. Black, did you want to say, Casper, something or?
After this statement, I don't think nothing else needs to be said. I think that's how we should end the show every time until the situation is, until Palestine is free. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Well,
All right.
from our queer bunch to you and everyone watching at home, thank you for being with us on the show, and we'll see you at the
Thank
next episode. We love you.
Bye. Bye. Love you. Bye.